so much of who I am as a person has been developed because of how I express myself through poetry. I have always been fighting for the whisper of a person I was and the cacophony of bad personness I am. I have been fighting for my piece of air. Amongst the stars my mother's descendants will find, carve my name into moon sand, where the wind will not flow and the sun never sleeps, and the fire will burn, anaerobically infinite, and my hands, unfurling, will set my people ablaze anew.
From PBS NewsHour Student Reporting Labs
and WETA,
this is On Our Minds
with Ashley
and Tyler,
a podcast about the teenage experience made by teenagers for teenagers.
Because we all need a place to feel heard.
Before we get started, we want to let you know that in today's episode, issues such as culture, race, and police brutality come up. We encourage you to listen with a friend or an adult and talk about these issues after you listen.
Hey Ashley.
Hi.
How are we doing today? We're finally on the Poetry and Performing Arts episode. I know you've been so excited about this one.
That I am. To me, poetry has always just been this outlet. It's been an amazing way for me to connect with my community and the people that I've met through it.
I feel that same way about filmmaking, honestly. Being able to have a community and being able to tell stories that you feel like are important to you is so vital. I mean, it's just really cool to be able to have an outlet to talk about things that are on your mind or things that you think should be expressed, you know?
I think the arts definitely have a way of helping teens manage their mental health, to really provide an outlet to express emotions that they might otherwise have trouble processing, or even to raise their voices in protest.
In our first segment, Katarina interviews a teen poet named Kylan about how slam poetry empowers Black youth. The poem that Kylan will recite is about police brutality and the Black Lives Matter movement. It was recorded before Tyree Nichols' death at the hands of Memphis police officers.
Thank you so much for being here today, Kylan. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm 17 years old. I'm the president of my poetry club. No shocker there, but I'm also the head drum major of my marching band. Really like being in a position of leadership and helping people around me.
Would you mind performing just a little bit of a piece that you feel can impact our audience today?
So I have one, and the working title is called Grammar. I've always been really good at words and grammar, you see. In English class last year, we learned how to pastiche. That is, to imitate the style of another artistic work. I wondered how the original artists of the work would feel, to know their work could be so easily taken into a new context. Did it dull the art's original intent? I thought pastiching was an easy way to short-circuit kids' creativity, giving them an out from having to create a thought from its beginning to end. I understood nonetheless. Pastiching was to make it simple for my peers and I not to misstep into the wrong grammatical structure. But I've always been really good at words and grammar, you see. And the other day I got to thinking why some people felt the need to pastiche the phrase Black Lives Matter and turn it into a poor copycat, All Lives Matter, which is still stripping and changing the original's intended meaning. So yes, I think in this crude context, pastiching hurts the first phrase because all lives matter, and its imitation continues to shoot down those that say we raised our fists for those that can't, that got their life stripped from them when a police officer decided to pastiche the Trayvon Martin before them, the Breonna Taylor before them, the George Floyd before them, the unnamed soul after them. After we learned how to pastiche sentences in English class, everyone made A's on their papers. Because yes, our teacher saw the similar structure which the sentences shaped, but still took note of its unique originality and word choice. We see on the news how these instances of police brutality take place with the same victim and perpetrator, but a judge will still acknowledge the uniqueness of each case, the originality in weapon choice and circumstances which the situation lies in, because police officers deserve patrol and a second chance, a second draft of a life to mimic their past mistakes. But we, the helpless souls bound by the ends of barrels with blue backgrounds, can only take a knee and protest in hopes that this is enough to not make our next encounter with the police the final draft of our life. Protests do not happen for the fame or glory because Derek Chauvin and George Zimmerman already got their infamy. We protest because it is the unmistakable voice of the public that feels the pain and grief from mothers mothers who will never see their sons, and daughters who will never spend a birthday with their mother. And yes, each protest may very well be a pastiche of its past echo, but we would not be here if it wasn't necessary to reiterate that phrase that you cannot kill innocent people without killing the hope in the hearts of millions who grew up believing every officer, regardless of their upbringing, had to uphold the values of this community.
How would you describe slam poetry to our audience?
I would describe it as an emotional connection that you get to have with a room full of strangers, because whether or not you realize it, you're putting yourself out there, you're putting your artwork for other people to listen to, and it really gives you the opportunity to connect with people who you may not have had the chance to otherwise.
Kylan really did something really powerful with their poem. I hope I can be a writer like that one day. And it's amazing to see people talk about such important issues with such integrity and intelligence.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful feeling to be able to express yourself, whether the topic is national and political, like our last piece, or very intimate and personal, like what we'll hear next. In the rest of the episode, we'll hear how creative writing and performing arts have helped teens build confidence no matter what they're facing.
In our next story, we'll hear from Carly, who goes to my high school right here in Columbus. She stopped speaking in public because of her stutter, but she was able to overcome that fear through creative writing and dance.
Hey there. My name is Carly, and I'm a 17-year-old high school student from Columbus, Ohio. And for those who are listening, I have a stutter. It's small and isn't always noticeable, but it's there. Normally, when I record audio for assignments for school or something, I always redo takes and cut out things when I stutter. So for this, I thought that I would challenge myself to keep the takes in even when I stutter. Our story begins back when I was in elementary school, and I kind of thought that everybody had a stutter. And then I remember one time I was sitting at dinner and my parents kind of pointed it out, and I was like, oh, this is different. And I instantly became completely just insecure about it. I remember being so nervous to talk to new kids or to raise my hand and participate in class, and even ask for simple things like going to the restroom or asking for help. My uncle and my dad worked for a stationery company, and they made journals and little books and stuff, and my dad would always have them lying around the house, and my uncle would always give them to me for birthdays and stuff. And I would write these one-page little short stories, and I filled probably 20 of them by the time I was 7 or 8 years old. It was something early on that I could use for communication without having to talk. I also am a dancer. I started dance when I was probably 3 or 4 years old, and I've been doing it ever since. It has been another creative outlet that has helped me tremendously with my stutter and my anxiety. And last year, in my junior year of high school, I took a film analysis class, as film was what I want to do in my future. And we had this thing called Short Film Friday, where we watch short films every Friday. And my teacher showed us one about someone with a stutter.
I'm calling about...
Hello? Sir, can you hear me?
My...
Hello? Sir, are you there?
Bill.
And I had never really seen good representation of stutters in media, really, ever. Every time they'd been in movies, it had been someone not acting well or someone was being treated badly because of that stutter. And so it was a huge turning point in my life. And since then, I have seen my social anxiety and all of that go down so much. Finding those things again, finding my writing, finding the little things about dance that I loved really helped that go down. And I don't think that our world will ever fully be able to understand people with speech impediments and stutters, but I just wish that the world would be a little bit more kind and educate themselves on it. I would say one of the first things that people can do is when you're talking to somebody with a stutter, if they're stuttering, don't finish their sentence for them. Don't interrupt them if they're stuttering. Just let them finish their sentence. And when I get interrupted or someone finishes my sentence for me or thinks that I'm done talking, it's extremely rude and disrespectful. So be patient, be kind.
I think she just sounded so well-spoken and confident. And I also think that her advice is so important.
I find it interesting that a film helped her rediscover her love of dance and writing. The film that Carly includes in her piece is called The Stutterer. It won the 2016 Oscar for Best Short Film Live Action.
I think that for many young people out there who are getting into the creative and fine arts, there's this very big fear about putting your work out there.
Yeah, there's such great vulnerability that comes with putting out work, and it is such a great risk to be able to put out something that you feel is so connected to who you are.
It's scary to think about the fact that there's going to be people out there that don't like what you do. But I think through the creative arts, so many young people can learn to face that kind of rejection and to become more resilient and more confident in themselves as they face failure, as they face the fact that most likely there's going to be at least one person out there who just doesn't like what you're doing, and that's totally okay.
And that leads us really into our next story about two freshmen who overcame failure by getting back up and trying something else.
Hi, I'm Brianna.
And I'm Elliot.
We met as two little freshmen standing in front of the giant glass doors of our prestigious fine arts magnet high school with our timid, introverted reflections staring back at us. And it's safe to say we were both nervously excited.
We would be going to a place where we could be with other writers and learn about writing for much of the school day, and we'd hoped we'd find a place where we felt like we belonged.
But our school is a very cutthroat program, and as two freshmen with no clue what was going on half the time, we were properly terrified. When you see all these amazing other writers, you can't help but feel inadequate.
Then things only got worse when our first literary magazine submissions came around. We submitted some work that we both felt proud of, and then we just sat in bed at home, refreshing the page where the accepted submissions would be posted. Finally, the results were uploaded, and we searched all over for our names, and we were both rejected.
It was a total blow to our self-confidence. It felt like tangible proof that we weren't meant to be here. Rejection at that early stage really felt like the end of the world, and we would have no hope for our future because if we couldn't do this, how could we do it for the rest of our high school careers?
A bit into the year, after we got to mend our pride for a bit, our major hosted a playwriting festival with plays written by the juniors. Anyone was allowed to audition or direct a play.
As little unknown freshmen, we didn't think we would have this chance, so you can imagine our shock when we received a message that we had been chosen to direct a play each and act in two others. It started to feel like we were valued in this community of writers.
It wasn't just about getting that validation, but joining a group that felt like family was the most acceptance that we could have gotten. At first, the failure was tough, but after finding out that we don't need to define ourselves by our successes and failures, we became more confident in our abilities as writers and performers and learned how to accept rejection. That confidence and acceptance that didn't just come from getting into a magazine or a sports team or into a musical or anything. It came from finding a place where we could both be ourselves. And we believe that everyone should have a place where they feel valued and comfortable and worth something, because everyone is.
All the students who worked on today's segments were really brave putting themselves and their work out there. Ashley, would you like to read or recite one of your own poems?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the poem I've selected is one of my more recent ones. I wrote it while listening to Marjorie by Taylor Swift at 1 a.m. So I was in a little bit of a funky mental state. It's called Letters to My Mother. As a second-generation immigrant, I think that our life experiences are just very different. And it can be kind of hard to talk, I think, as second-generation immigrants to first-generation immigrants because of just cultural differences or language barriers and just all the reasons why it's hard for a teenager to connect with their parents. There's a line from a poem that I wrote, and it's not this one, but it says, "I cannot put into English her Chinese pain." And this is just kind of my way to tell her that even though I might not be able to understand all of the pain that she's gone through to raised 2 kids in a country where she doesn't really speak the language and she's away from all her friends and family. I'm telling her that I'm so thankful for her and all the things that she sacrificed for us, and that I'm trying to understand the best I can, and that I love her. Because this is a 3-part poem, I probably will only be reading the first part, but yeah, this is Letters to My Mother. 1. Before. You go to the checkups alone. You don't understand, but you do, like you always have. This town is not big enough for you and your husband and your son and the little one on the way. Your son begs you for a sister, not a brother, he says, because Jeremy's little brother's really annoying, but a little sister. How beautiful would that be, you think? You look out the window of your townhouse at this endless rurality, this neighborhood of neighbors who look nothing like you, whose children look nothing like yours, or at least half of yours, because maybe this baby will get lucky and look less like she doesn't belong. Maybe she'll grow up wondering why the kids at school wrinkle their noses at the lunch you painstakingly pack every night, and she'll ask to bleach her black hair, dark as ink, calligraphy stains of Chinese characters you'll try your best to teach her to read. She'll be like her dad, or maybe she won't. Maybe she'll be the sum of all the love that your family has passed down throughout the years. The flat nose and the tough love of your mother, or the soft eyes and sharp wit of your father, or the small face and unrelenting kindness of your sister. Your friends tell you to get ready for her teenage years, because that's when they get mean. But you feel that solid weight kicking against your stomach from the inside out. And you wonder how this little being, so weak and small, could ever be anything less than your daughter.
Oh my goodness, that was incredible. I love how you were able to communicate a perspective that I will never be able to understand, but I felt like just for that moment, I could learn something about you and your family and your experience, and it was really something that I feel like I learned a lot from, and thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
The poem that you heard at the very beginning of the episode is an excerpt from another one of Ashley's poems. It connects really well into our next episode coming in 2 weeks when
I get to interview one of my favorite poets, Chen Chen. We talk about everything from Chinese culture to the value of language to carving out your own path despite parental expectations and so much more. Please make sure to listen.
Today's segments are produced by Katarina from Lake Travis High School in Austin, Texas.
Carly from Upper Arlington High School in Columbus, Ohio.
And Elliot and Breanna from Legacy of Educational Excellence High School in San Antonio, Texas.
This episode was produced by youth media producer Chris Schwalm with help from lead podcast producer Briget Ganske.
Editorial director Marie Kusick and executive producer Leah Clapman.
Excerpt from the film The Stutterer, used with courtesy of Bear Golly Films.
Theme music by Jackson Teedens.
Additional music by Blue Dot Sessions.
If you or someone you know needs help, we have a list of resources at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources.